Hello, my name is Richard Corbett from emergebydesign.net, and welcome to my weekly astrological and human design transit report. This week, we'll be taking a look at Monday, July 28th through Sunday, August 3rd. Now, before we jump into the day-to-day charts, I do want to bring us into the framework of where we are in this lunar cycle, because that's a very important context to everything that I'm going to be talking about on the daily charts. So last Thursday, we had a new moon in Leo, gate 31. It's the season of the sun. So we're thinking about the idea of creativity and play, how we are formulating our own unique sense of individual influence and authenticity through play and creativity. Now, this new moon was exactly to the degree opposite of Pluto in Aquarius. And the new moon is always the signature of the chapter we're in a month. There's very important, obviously, and there's 12, sometimes 13, but we can certainly get a sense by the new moon we had last week, looking at the opposition to Pluto, that it had a very strong Plutonic signature. Now, as we go into this calendar week, we're going to have our first quarter moon on Friday in Scorpio. And Pluto is the modern ruler of the sign of Scorpio. So again, another strong signature Pluto at the first quarter. And then a week later, on August 9th, we're going to have a full moon in Aquarius. And just a day and a half prior to the full moon, the moon will have made a conjunction to Pluto right before the full moon. So I'm sharing all that just to say that this entire lunar cycle has a very strong Plutonic signature. And so I want to talk about that just a little bit. I have experienced Pluto in such a deep and personal way. I first got to know Pluto when I had one of my only hard aspects with Pluto. Clear back in 2008 through 2010, Pluto was conjunct the design Earth in my human design body graph, and which meant that it was activating all gates in my incarnation cross. And so through those years, it's really actually when I got into astrology. I'd already been working with human design for many years, but I became fascinated by that experience that led me into working with astrology. And it had other profound impacts. And as I look back, it was the most challenging, most difficult experience to date that I've ever had, that transit, but it also was the most formative. It took a lot of years and growth and maturity for me to recognize that. But I'm sharing my personal experience just to add some flavor to the Lord of the underworld. Pluto is such a powerful frequency. He represents ultimately truth. Now, he's often experienced as a sense of fear, limitation, overwhelm, despair, often accompanied with a great sense of loss. It can be an overwhelming feeling in the sense that it's very illogical. Pluto is not about what we think is logic. It's about distilling our ultimate truth, stripping away the facade of false ego, arrogance, things like that. It's Pluto puts us through, in a sense, the ringer, the ring of fire to emerge transformed and reborn fresh on the other side of it. And so this may be stimulated in each of us, depending on how this is landing in your chart and how close to some of the aspects are to your natal chart. We're all going to experience this to varying degrees. You know, when I talk about these cosmic weather every week in these reports, it's like a storm system passing through a town or a community. We're all getting the same weather system. It's just, it can be felt differently localized. One house gets extreme lightning and the couple streets over might get some light rain, but it is the same system. And so I really wanted to highlight how Pluto is so involved at each lunation of this particular lunar cycle. And that it's this power struggle between internal truth and external reality. And how do we balance that? How do we work with that? And one thing about Pluto, from my personal experience, is that it's about developing a large degree of acceptance and surrender. And I just wanted to start this week's report with putting that in the framework here. That as we meet challenges, particularly emotionally stimulating challenges, which the chart indicates we will have some emotional turbulence this week, to remember at that point that that's a little indicator light on the dashboard of our vehicle, right? Saying, stop, breathe, collect ourselves. Right now is an incredible opportunity to heal, to accept, to surrender. And much of the chart is pointing at the Saturn Neptune conjunction. They never reach their perfection, but they're incredibly tight right now. Saturn and Neptune in gate 25, the spirit of the higher self, the gate of innocence. There are opportunities right now to develop a sense of self-love that doesn't have conditions, right? Living life with preconditions. You know, we all do this sometimes. I'd be happy if this, or if they would just do this. If this external thing would just change, then things would be okay. But what gate 25 teaches us is this idea of living life with pure innocence, trusting that everything happening externally is divinely orchestrated for my own personal growth and development, to touch on my sense of spirit of my higher self and my unique contribution to the world. And if for all of us that are alive and breathing right now, we are all extremely important to the overall movement of our collective world right now. It's such dynamic, amazing, evolutionary changes. We are not only getting the first waves of right now, but it's just the beginning. We are at the tip of the iceberg of dramatic changes that will continue to evolve over the next 2 to 3 years. I talked about this a bit in my last week's video. The outer planets are forming a triangle now, and they've also all recently in the past 9 months changed the sign that they're in. And Neptune and Uranus will actually go back into their previous sign as we come into the later part of the year, and then move back into the sign that they're in now. So these outer planets, which are forming the overall structure of what's happening right now, are very dynamic, and they're moving into these sextiles and trine with each other that are very supportive. I am incredibly optimistic about what is possible as we lean into the future, but I'm also sensing how potent and powerful actions now, the impact they will have on where we are this time next year. So I don't want to get too far into that. I just wanted to plant the seed of that, how important this particular lunar cycle, because it was the new moon opposite Pluto, and both of them were at 2 degrees of their sign, which were directly tied in to the Saturn-Neptune conjunction at 1 and 2 degrees of Aries, and Uranus at 0 degrees of Gemini. So what's happening in this lunar cycle is so connected to the greater structure that's evolving over the next couple of years. So this idea of Pluto this month, that there's going to be very dynamic energy. That when we get to the full moon chart in a couple of weeks, I was like, wow, look at this chart. Like, it's so dynamic. But yet here at this moment, as we head into the first quarter moon, it is so much about pausing. And Mercury's in retrograde. This is a very key element to the overall signature this week. While we may feel a lot of pressure to want to change something, to alter something, to remember that we don't really have all of the information right now. We really want to allow ourselves to give space to Mercury in retrograde, to review, reanalyze, reshuffle, rethink, to know that our mind may be racing around trying to formulate the answer, but we want to have some patience right now in regard to that. We need to let this Mercury retrograde cycle play out and not jump the gun, say something too soon, commit to something under the pressure right now, when really I think the pressure is an indicator to pause. Okay, so I'll say more about that when we get into the day-to-day charts, but it's an incredibly powerful lunar cycle. And also want to mention, if you haven't seen them already, my partner, Brandy Jordan, is putting out some amazing daily content right now to help us connect with our bodies. This is truly a super incredibly important time to really get comfortable with regulating during stimulating times. This is going to serve us so well as we deal with what's coming at us so fast right now. Okay, that was a pretty big prelude, but let's go ahead and get right into the charts. Okay, I'm going to pull up Monday. All of my charts, except for the lunations, so except for the first quarter moon on Friday, all of these charts we'll be looking at are for noon Mountain Time. You would have to adjust for your time zone, but other than that, and I always set them at 0 degrees Aries on the astrological chart. I don't use the house system because that would change based on where you are in the globe. So as we start the week out on Monday, we have the sun still in gate 31, where it did have the new moon back on Thursday. Traveling through Leo. Now, last week we had Venus squaring Mars the whole week. And that is fading now. It's just fading out. So it's separating. So we may have had a little angst, whether that could have been in relationships. Mars and Venus are the cosmic lovers. Could have been in relationships at work, or it could even be an internal dynamic between our yin and yang energy, being too aggressive, too passive, not knowing, dealing with this Pluto power conflict going on. Something may have been stimulated that may still be percolating. But what I want to point out on Monday is we are having a very helpful Venus sextile Chiron. Now, Venus is at the final degrees of Gemini in gate 12. This is how we're getting the channel of openness. We have the South Node still in gate 22, Venus in gate 12. This is an individual channel of authentic emotional expression. And Chiron is currently in gate 3, doesn't get an activation in the human design system, but as you all know, I love to follow Chiron, such an important archetype in our lives. Chiron is in gate 3, which is in the channel of mutation. So we have this chironic healing opportunity while this percolating, this shift, we are evolving. Deep changes are percolating within each of us. And we can see on Monday with this emotional signature, we have a chance here to really relax into that, right? To allow space, to connect with our own authentic emotions, to know what's mine and what's them, to have that sense of boundaries, because we are going through this opportunity for healing here. And that may be in whatever area of our life we felt that Mars-Venus square for the past week. Yeah, there's definitely on Monday an opportunity to sort of sink into that healing idea. And how are we evolving with this gate 25? As I've mentioned often and will continue to mention, as I look at the near-term transits, the far-term transits, I keep coming back to this Saturn-Neptune conjunction in gate 25. This is the fulcrum of the energy right now. And I think really contemplating a sense of innocence, whether or not you have gate 25 defined or not, but it's worth looking at to see, what would be impacted by gate 25 with this transit, what other individual gates you do have in your individual circuitry, because they are definitely being stimulated by these two planets there. But the message of gate 25, which is also an archetype of wounding, right? We receive shocks from the world, experiences, things happen. We are initiated into a healing process, and gate 25 takes that in, but it's about healing from that and developing innocence. Life without preconditions is ultimate freedom, right? As not evolving nine-centered beings, the idea that we can live our fullest expression of authenticity and truth at all times implies that we don't get stimulated or hurt by other people. Now, that's a big ask, but it is part of our evolutionary shift that we are going through as a species right now. So really want to highlight the emphasis on that archetype of gate 25. Okay, so yeah, the Chiron-Venus sextile, I feel very supportive because we still have this agitation. The Mars-Venus square is fading, but on Monday, we are going to get the moon conjunct Mars in gate 6. And that is the gate of friction, the gate of conflict. So and also that channel of openness being defined, the individual emotional expression, the solar plexus is getting a bit of a workout this week, but an opportunity, right? I think anytime we feel that sense of overwhelm, feel that sense of overstimulation, to come home to our body, Pluto has a message for us. There is a message of crystallized truth available when we face our shadows. This is not a healthy time to gloss over instances. It's not a healthy time to sweep things under the rug. They will only come back to haunt us, but standing firm in self-love and groundedness right now allows us to listen to our body and to the truth that Pluto is unearthing while he has these signatures this month. So yeah, a little bit of a mixed bag there on Monday as we get going, but I do want to emphasize that we are growing in illumination from here to the first quarter moon. And now we'll go ahead and move into Tuesday. Now, I think on Tuesday and Wednesday in particular, we're going to get a little bit of a reprieve. As we look at the astrological chart for Tuesday, we can see that there's a few aspects. Of course, as I mentioned, we've got the outer planets forming this incredible formation between Pluto at 2 degrees Aquarius, forming a sextile with both Saturn and Neptune at the first couple degrees of Aries, and also that Gemini or Uranus and Gemini, that outer planet triangle is really showing us that there's something happening. As tumultuous, as polarized, as chaotic and horrific many scenes of the world are right now, it's because we are going through a systemic evolutionary shift in the world right now. And that can present its own sense of fear in itself, right? Like it just can look pretty scary at times, but yet I want to emphasize there is so much opportunity for actualization of your truth. Whatever message of beauty and creativity that you want to deliver to the world, if you can just mine that gem of truth right now through your own mutative process, through your own creative development, whatever that is. It doesn't mean we're all going to be creatively artists like the next Picasso, wherever you bring beauty and love to the world. For me personally, it's in the outdoors, adventures, right? Pushing my body in creative ways to create exciting experiences with friends and family. There's something I love to do, whatever it is. We don't want to be judgmental, that comparing it to other people. That's one of the shadows of this lunar cycle, is comparing what we're doing to what everybody else is doing, which is not helpful right now. It's about going inward into the plutonic, personal, individual, mutative depths of our being right now to allow a tending to the creative garden of our soul to express itself, meeting the shadows and challenges along the way, recognizing, accepting them, surrendering to what we can change and cannot change, and finding the growth internally for ourselves. So to remember that it's not about comparison right now. All right, let me come back to this moon on Tuesday, because here's what I think Tuesday and Wednesday, the moon goes into Libra. Now, after the moon leaves Libra in a couple of days and goes into Scorpio, things are really going to heat up even more. And I'll get to that when I talk about the first quarter moon in terms of dynamic frictional energy. But while the moon's in Libra, Libra is the sign of harmony, relationship. It's about balance. And I think Tuesday and Wednesday will be wonderful days to really spend a little time with ourselves, with our modalities, really developing a practice that works for us, because it's going to pay off with huge dividends as we go through not only this lunar cycle, but where we're going into the future. So yeah, I think the moon in Leo, and also at this noontime chart on Tuesday, the moon is making its opening sextile to the sun. So this is a very supportive phase of this lunar cycle. And I think it helps that it's in Libra, finding this idea of balance internally, externally, in relationships, whatever we can do to synthesize with that. This is the sign that Venus rules. So paying attention to our sensory body, self-pampering, so to speak, those kinds of things can be very helpful. And let's go ahead and we'll move it into Wednesday. Again, moon still traveling through Libra. So that Tuesday, Wednesday into early morning on Thursday, very beneficial time. As you can see from the astrological wheel, not a lot of aspects other than what we're seeing from those outer planets. We are going to get the moon traveling through Libra. We'll go through gate 57. So we all are going to get the channel of the brainwave on Wednesday. It's a fast moving transit, but I think through finding that balance and internal harmony on Wednesday, there could be a flash of insight, an emotional insight, something clicks. And I think through this process of surrendering to the plutonic lunar cycle, there is an opportunity where these truths will emerge. This is part of the trust and acceptance, that allowing ourselves to recognize the uncomfortableness, to recognize the darkness, right? To get comfortable with the dark. This is part of the plutonic shadow work, will allow these truths to emerge. And we may get a sense of that with that channel being activated on Wednesday. Okay, we'll go into Thursday. Oh, I'm sorry. I forgot to mention on Wednesday that the sun moved into gate 33 in Leo, putting the earth in gate 19. Now, this is important as well, where, as I mentioned, we're in this waxing phase, heading to this powerful, dynamic first quarter moon. But here we have the sun going into the gate of retreat and privacy. And again, I think this is a really important element to this stage of this lunar cycle. with all the intensity, Plutonic intensity, the signature here on Wednesday is timing, following personal timing, right? To reflect in privacy, really important. And I think that's why having these modalities that give us a little personal space have really healthy benefits right now. And as I'm saying that, looking at the chart, we can see that Mercury still in retrograde is just a couple of degrees away from its retrograde conjunction with the sun. So again, we can feel like Mercury's coming back to the sun with some more information here. He's retracking territory he's already been here, and it's working on this idea of authentic creativity, influence, and expression, that right now at this stage, it's through privacy and retreat and waiting for our own personal rhythm and timing on how we engage. And of course, we look to our natal human design body graph, to our personal authority, spending time contemplating, connecting, using somatic exercises to connect with your voice of truth right now is incredibly supported by this weather. Even though it can look so stormy on the outside, we can find the truth on the inside. So yeah, definitely wanted to mention that sun transition to the 33, which puts the Earth, which is always opposite the sun, in its polarity in gate 19, the gate of the pressure to need. Now, what I do want to point out about that, as I mentioned, the moon is in Libra, so it's very supportive to find balance and harmony, but the solar plexus has got some things going on here. We have all three root center pressure gates activated: the Earth in 19, Jupiter, this huge, voluminous, expansive energy in gate 39, the provocateur, and Pluto in gate 41. Those gates are all pointing at the solar plexus. Has special ramifications if you do have a gate in 49, 55, or 30. And we also have Mars still in that gate 6 of conflict and friction, and the south node in gate 22. I'm sorry, the north node. I said the south node. I meant the north node. The north node in gate 22. And so what I'm indicating here is that there's a lot happening around our emotional energy here. And with that Plutonic signature, we may really feel it. So I find looking at these transits to be so supportive because they simply give awareness. So when I feel triggering or emotional stimulation this week, I can smile and be like, oh, well, I kind of knew that was coming, and now let me work with it. Let me be present. That's what I do these reports for myself, is to bring presence to what's happening with me right now. Being present is being available to the gifts and the truth that Pluto is urging out of me right now. And so these are a great couple of days for that. But just to be aware that emotional stimulation right now is healthy if we can regulate and integrate. Okay, we'll go into Thursday. And on Thursday, at this noontime chart, we can see that the moon has just moved into sign of Scorpio. This is the home sign of Pluto, who's so connected to the whole cycle. So that brings an added layer of intensity. This is fixed water and Scorpio with the moon there. This is a very powerful moon. And in relationship to the Plutonic frequency of the cycle, things may really be heating up right now on Thursday. And as you look at the astrological chart, there are so many aspects. We've got a trine to Venus, but then we have a quincunx to Uranus, an opposition to Chiron, and a quincunx to gate 25 with Saturn and Neptune. So we're right before the first quarter of the moon. Not only do we have the moon in Scorpio, which is significant, what I just shared, we have the moon making lots of stimulating, challenging aspects to all these other important planets. And we're the day before the first quarter. Well, the first quarter moon is when the moon is she's at half illumination. It's a very dynamic on this opening square between our two luminaries, the moon and the sun. The moon has so much emotional energy here. It's the most torque, if you will, as she's heading towards that full moon. So we're deep into the story right now. And the first quarter insinuates that we're dealing with the outer world, with whatever is being plutonically unearthed right now. So again, very dynamic in that way. And I think incredibly stimulating. And that's why I keep kind of coming back to that. So let's go in and get into the first quarter moon itself, which is here on Friday at 6:41 a.m. Mountain Time. And let's go ahead and look at some of the symbolism here. We can see the square between the moon in Scorpio, the moon being in gate 44, the gate of alertness in the splenic awareness center. We can see that we've got a square also because Venus has moved into the sign of Cancer and she is squaring the Saturn-Neptune conjunction. So we have Venus in gate 15 in the G center and Saturn and Neptune, of course, as I've been talking so much about, in gate 25. Now, these are two love gates. And gate 15 is called the love of humanity. It's also named the gate of extremes. And when we dig into the archetype of this gate, it speaks to the idea of the extreme nature of all the different human beings that make up our species, and this cultivating this idea of love of everyone. Now, as I say that, it really relates to that gate 25, which is love without preconditions, being innocent and pure in our love and developing a sense of that. Obviously, so challenging during these times of extreme polarization. Yet again, the charts are pointing us inward to cultivate this sense of love. But it is in this dynamic square to gate 25 with Saturn and Neptune in retrograde. So there, again, as we look at the astrological wheel this first quarter moon, it's very intense for all of the plutonic, scorpionic, lunar reasons I've mentioned. And we have those squares, but then we also have the trine energy from the outer planets. So what's happening in this lunar cycle is very connected to the longer term trajectory, long-term patterns of the greater outer planet structure that's evolving as we go into the next couple of years. So again, incredibly dynamic time, but just want to encourage this contemplation of where am I allowing fear, doubt, and insecurity to hold me back? Where am I allowing comparison or perceived projected judgments of others affecting my actual motives? In other words, what is our motive right now? And I think when we're aligning the idea of motive and intentions with true inner self love and authenticity, now we're hitting pay dirt. And Pluto right now, in its excavation of our truth and soul, which is what it's built for, it is working on that. And so anything that's challenging or limiting, we can look at that right now and recognize, let me be curious here. There's something to learn that I'm not aware of from my dysregulation. So to not fear the dysregulation, to use it as a, oh, that's a reminder, time for me to do some breathing, time to watch some of Brandy's videos. She's got some helpful messages right now to connect with our innate wisdom of our body. So powerful and potent to support us in this evolutionary journey right now. Wow, what a first quarter moon. Can't wait till we're looking at the, till I show you guys the full moon in next week's report. But let's go ahead and get going through the rest of this week. We're going to go into Saturday, August 2nd. Not a lot of other aspects. I mean, this Venus, again, still having that square between gate 15 and gate 25, and there's a bit of a quincunx to Pluto, again, in the moon in Scorpio. So I think it's sort of more the same right now. This waxing phase is super intense. It's elevating everyone's energy, everyone's emotions. When the moon grows in illumination, we feel it on the planet. So there's an elevated energy, but really pausing, right? The sun in gate 33, Mercury has, I didn't mention at the exact moment, but Mercury made that conjunction in gate 33, line 2. And that, funny enough, in the Ravi Ching, the name of gate 33, line 2 is surrender. And I really think that Mercury Sun conjunction in that line really holds a nugget of truth for this lunar cycle. It is about surrendering right now to really, again, the more we can develop innocence, life without preconditions, acceptance that the orchestration is happening as it does, but I am me and my role, as long as I'm in my lane, so to speak, working on my growth, development, creative contribution to the world, I am getting fair winds. So even though it looks pretty stormy out there, we can align with where the support is, and tremendous support for that type of healing work going on right now. So Saturday, and then we'll wrap it up here on Sunday. And now if we look at the body graph, we can see that the moon Well, both at the charts, I guess. The moon has moved into Sagittarius. Now, this will be a very different flavor, having gone through that 2 1/3 days with the moon in Scorpio, very intense, a lot of difficult aspects. Once we get into Sagittarius, again, sort of another breath here. We could sort of carry on towards the full moon. Moon in Sagittarius can bring a sense of optimism. It's in gate 9 right now, the gate of focus. Venus has just moved into gate 52 in Cancer. And so we're getting this logical structure of focused determination. And where are we putting our focus? I think when I look at that channel, my first response is a lot of emotional stimulation going on with this plutonic cycle. Where am I putting my attention? Where we put attention, energy flows, and we can dissipate. If we're putting our attention on things that are not important or getting caught up in external drama that doesn't align with who we are, where we are, to recognize that. And I think now, that's not to say that there aren't things happening. You want to get engaged. I just want to say that the focus and concentration is hyper important right now. What we're doing today is setting us up for next summer. There's no getting around that. And I'll spend more time on other videos articulating the reason I am using these words. But these times right now, this particular plutonic lunar cycle is a seed planting time for what's coming. And so our actions, our attention, what we focus our attention and determination on now, that is in alignment with our sense of truth and higher self, is going to bear fruit as we move into these times of unimaginable change and speed. Things do really feel like they're speeding up. So this is an important time. I think I could say much more about that, but I just want to bring our awareness to what's possible just in this week and this month as we move through this first quarter moon and heading to the full moon, that it's really connecting to the body like never before and loving ourselves, nurturing ourselves, giving us the space, giving yourself the time to have your own sense of privacy, to breathe and relax. There's something happening inside of us without effort. It's just simply giving the space and attention and presence to that process will give you the return on investment of that energy that we all would hope to see, I'm sure. So I think I'll wrap it up there. Thank you so much for being with me, and I hope you all have a wonderful week, and I'll see you next time. Bye for now.